Hello and welcome. My name is Alan, and we are back with more The Diary of Anne Frank. Yeah, we'll be continuing here. Everybody's kind of getting on everybody else's nerves, as we have been seeing, so. But yes, let's jump right into this. Thursday, August the 10th, 1943. Dearest Kitty, a new idea. During meals, I talk more to myself than to the others, with which has two advantages. First, they're glad that they don't have to listen to any continuous chatter, and second, I don't have to get annoyed by their opinions. I don't think my opinions are stupid, but other people do, so it's better to keep them to myself. I apply the same tactic when I have to eat something I loathe. I put this dish in front of me, pretend it's delicious, and looking at it as much as possible, and it's gone before I've had time to realize what it is. When I get up in the morning, another very disagreeable moment, I leap out of bed, think to myself, you'll be slipping back under the covers soon, walk to the window, take down the blackout screens, steal at the crack of dawn, or sniff at the crack of dawn, at the crack until I feel a bit of fresh air and I'm awake. I strip the bed as fast as I can so I won't be tempted to get back in. Do you know what Mother calls this sort of thing? The art of living. Isn't that a funny expression? What we've been doing what all, we've all been a little confused this past week because our dearly beloved Wester Torin bells have been carted off to be melted down for the war. So we have no idea of the exact time, either night or day. I still have hopes that they'll come up with a substitute made of tin or copper or some such thing to remind the neighborhood of the clock. Everywhere I go, upstairs or down, they all cast admiring glances at my feet, which are adorned by a pair of especially beautiful, for times like these, shoes. Miep managed to snap them up for 27.50 guilders. Burgundy colored suede and leather with medium sized high heels. I feel as if I'm on stilts, but look even taller than I really am. Yesterday was my unlucky day. I pricked my right thumb and the blunt end of a needle. As a result, Margot had to peel potatoes for me, take the good with the bad, and writing was awkward. Then I bumped into the cupboard door so hard it nearly knocked me over, and I was scolded for making such a racket. They wouldn't let me run water to bathe my forehead, so now I'm walking around with a giant lump over my right eye. To make matters worse, the little toe on my right foot got sucked in the vacuum cleaner. It bled and hurt, but my other ailments were already causing me so much trouble that I felt that I let this one slide, which was stupid of me because now I'm walking around with an infected toe. What with the salve, the gauze, and the tape, I can't get my heavenly new shoe on my foot. Dussel has put us in danger for the umpteenth time. He actually had me bring him a book and anti-Mussolini tirade, which has been banned. On the way here, she was knocked down by an SS motorcycle. She lost her head and shouted, "You brutes!" and went on her way. I don't dare think what would have happened if she had been taken down to headquarters. Yours, Anne. A daily chore on our little community, peeling potatoes. One person goes to get the newspaper, another the knives, keeping the best for himself, of course. The third, the potatoes, and the fourth, the water. Mr. Dussel begins. He may not always peel them very well, but he does peel non-stop, glancing left and right to see if everyone is doing it the way he does. No, they're not. Look, Anne, I am taking pillar in my hand like so, and going from the top to the bottom. 9, not so, but so. I think my way is easier, Mr. Dussel, I say tentatively. But this is the best way, Anne. This you can take from me. Of course, it is no matter. You do the way you want. We go on pilling. I glance at Dussel out of the corner of my eye. Lost in thought, he shakes his head over me, no doubt, but says no more. I keep on peeling, then I look at Father on the other side of me. To Father, peeling potatoes is not a chore, but precision work. When he reads, he has a deep wrinkle in the back of his head. But when he's preparing potatoes, beans, or vegetables, he seems to be totally absorbed in his task. He puts on his potato peeling face, and when it's set in that particular way, it would be impossible for him to turn out anything less than a perfectly peeled potato. I keep on working. I glance up for a second, but that's all the time I need. Mrs. Von Dunn is trying to attract Dussel's attention. She starts by looking in his direction, but Dussel pretends not to notice. She winks, but Dussel goes on peeling. She laughs, but Dussel doesn't look up. Then Mother laughs too, but Dussel pays no mind. Having failed to achieve her goal, Mrs. Von Dunn is obliged to change tactics. There's a brief silence. Then she says, "Pooty, why don't you put on an apron? Otherwise, I'll have to spend all day tomorrow trying to get the spots out of your suit. I'm not getting it dirty." Another brief silence. "Pooty, why don't you sit down?" "I'm fine this way. I like standing up." Silence. "Pooty, look out. Du spritzt schon." "I know, Mummy, but I'm being careful." Mrs. Von Dunn casts about for another topic. "Tell me, Pooty, why aren't the British carrying out any bombing raids today?" "Because the weather's bad, Curly." "But yesterday it was such a nice weather and they weren't flying then either." "Let's drop the subject." "Why? Can a person talk about that or offer an opinion?" "No." "Well, why in the world not?" "Oh, be quiet, Momachin." Mr. Frank always answers his wife. Mr. Von Dunn is trying to control himself. This remark always rubs him the wrong way, but Mrs. Von Dunn's not one to quit. "Oh, there's never going to be an invasion." Mr. Von Dunn turns white, and then she notices it. Mrs. Von Dunn turns red, but not about to be deterred. The British aren't doing a thing. The bomb bursts. "And now shut up! Donnerwetter, Donnerwetter noch Val. Mother can barely stifle a laugh and stare straight ahead. Scenes like these are repeated almost daily unless they've just had a terrible fight. In that case, neither Mr. nor Mrs. Von Don say a word. It's time for me to get some more potatoes. I go up to the attic where Peter is busy picking fleas from the cat. He looks up. The cat notices it and whoosh, he's gone. Out the window and into the rain gutter. Peter swears. I laugh and slip out of the room. Freedom in the annex. 5:30. Bep's arrival signals the beginning of our nightly freedom. Things get going right away. I go upstairs with Bep, who usually has her dessert before the rest of us. The moment she sits down, Mrs. Von Don begins stating her wishes. Her list usually starts with, "By the way, Bep, something else I'd like." Bep winks at me. Mrs. Von Don doesn't miss a chance to make her wishes known to whoever comes upstairs. It must be one of the reasons none of them like to go up there. 5:45. Bep leaves. I go down 2 floors to have a look around. First to the kitchen, then to the private office, and then to the co-bin to open the cat door for Malshi. After a long tour of inspection, I wind up in Mr. Kugler's office. Mr. Von Don is combing all the drawers and files for today's mail. Peter picks up Bosch and the warehouse key. Pim lugs the typewriters upstairs. Margot looks around for a quiet place to do her office work. Mrs. Von Don puts a kettle of water on the stove. Mother comes down the stairs with a pan of potatoes. We all know our jobs. Soon Peter comes back from the warehouse. The first question they ask him is whether he's remembered the bread. No, he hasn't. He crouches before the door to the front office to make himself as small as possible and crawls on his hands and knees to the steel cabinet, takes out the bread and starts to leave. At any rate, that's what he intends to do, but before he knows what's happened, Malshi has jumped all over him and gone to sit under the desk. Peter looks all around him. Aha! There's the cat. He crawls back into the office, grabs the cat by the tail. Malshi hisses. Peter sighs. What has he accomplished? Malshi's now sitting by the window, licking herself, very pleased at having escaped Peter's clutches. Peter has no choice but to lure her with a piece of bread. Malshi takes the bait, follows him out, and the door closes. I watch the entire scene through a crack in the door. Mr. Von Don is angry and slams the door. Margot and I exchange looks and think the same thing. He must have worked himself into a rage because of some blunder on Mr. Kugler's part, and he's forgotten all about the keg company next door. Another step is heard in the hallway. Dussel comes in and goes toward the window with the air of propriety, sniffs, coughs, sneezes, and clears his throat. He's out of luck. It was pepper. He continues on to the front office. The curtains are open, which means he can get at his writing paper. He disappears with a scowl. Margot and I exchange another glance. One less page for his sweetheart tomorrow. I hear her say, I nod in agreement. An elephant's tread is heard in the hallway, or in the stairway. It's Dussel, seeking comfort in his favorite spot. We continue working. Knock, knock, knock. 3 taps means dinner time. Monday, August the 23rd, 1943. Vinde Erhab Neon Schlacht. Margot and Mother are nervous. Shh. Father, be quiet. Otto, shh. Pim, it's 8:30. Come here, you can't run the water anymore. Walk softly. A sample of what's said to Father in the bathroom. At the stroke of 8:30, he has to be in the living room. No running water, no flushing toilet, no walking around, no noise whatsoever. As long as the office staff hasn't arrived, sounds travel more easily to the warehouse. The door opens upstairs at 8:20, and this is followed by 3 gentle taps on the floor. Anne's hot cereal. I clamber up the stairs to get my doggy dish. Back downstairs, everyone has to be done quickly. Quickly. I comb my hair, put away my potty, shove the bed back in place. Quiet. The clock is striking 8. 8:30. Mrs. Von Don changes shoes and shuffles through the room and in her slippers. Mr. Von Don, too, a veritable Charlie Chaplin. All is quiet. The idea family scene is now reached its high point. I want to read or study, and Margot does too. Father and Mother, ditto. Father is sitting with Dickens and the dictionary, of course, on the edge of the sagging, squeaky bed, which doesn't even have a decent mattress. 2 bolsters can be pulled or piled on top of each other. I don't need these, he thinks. I can manage without them. Once he starts reading, he doesn't look up. He laughs now and then and tries to get Mother to read a passage. I don't have the time right now. He looks disappointed, but then continues to read. A little while later, when he comes across another interesting bit, he tries again. You have to read this, Mother. Mother sits down on the folding bed, either reading, sewing, knitting, or studying, whichever is next on her list. An idea suddenly occurs to her, and she quickly says, so as not to forget, "Anne, remember to, Margot, jot this down." After a while, it's quiet again. Margot slams her book shut. Father knits his forehead, his eyebrows forming a funny curve, and his wrinkle of concentration reappearing in the back of his head, and he burrows himself in his book again. Mother starts chatting with Margot, and I get curious and listen too. Pim is drawn into the conversation. 9 o'clock. Breakfast. Friday, September the 10th, 1943. Dearest Kitty, every time I write to you, something special has happened. Usually unpleasant rather than pleasant. This time, however, something wonderful is going on. On Wednesday, September the 8th, we were listening to the 7 o'clock news when we heard an announcement. Here is some of the best news of the war so far. Italy has capitulated. Italy has unconditionally surrendered. The Dutch broadcast from England began at 8:15 with the news. Listeners, an hour and 15 minutes ago, just as I finished writing my daily report, we received the wonderful news of Italy's capitulation. I tell you, I never tossed my notes into the waste paper basket with more delight than I did today. God Save the King, the American national anthem, and the Russian Internationale were played. As always, the Dutch program was uplifting without being too optimistic. The British have landed in Naples. Northern Italy is occupied by the Germans. The truce was signed on Friday, September the 3rd, and while the British landed, the day the British landed in Italy, the Germans are ranting and raving in all the newspapers at the treachery of Badoglio and the Italian king. Still, there's bad news as well. It's about Mr. Kleiman. As you know, we all like him very much. He's unfailingly cheerful and amazingly brave, despite the fact that he's always sick and in pain and can't eat much or do a lot of walking. When Mr. Kleiman enters a room, the sun begins to shine, Mother said recently, and she's absolutely right. Now it seems he has to go to the hospital for a very difficult operation on his stomach, and we will have to stay there for at least 4 weeks. You should have seen him when he told us goodbye. He acted so normally, as though he were just off to do an errand. Yours, Anne. But we'll go ahead and end that episode there. So yeah, last episode, Mussolini resigned, and this episode, Italy officially surrenders. And the Germans, of course, aren't taking it kindly, because now they have no real allies in Europe. They're surrounded on all sides. Before, they were still surrounded with Britain in the West, and Britain and the U.S. in the West, and of course, the USSR in the East. But they always had Italy to help them. Now that's changed. The war is really turning. Who knows how long Hitler could have lasted as long as Italy was there? The war could have been so much longer, but once Italy fell, the only other ally Germany's got is Japan. But Russia's between, or at that point, I guess they were the USSR. Yeah, they were. Because Stalin was in charge. But, yeah. So you have America across the Atlantic, and then, of course, across the Channel, you've got Britain. You've also got, across the Atlantic, you've also got the Canadians. They're often forgotten in the fighting, but yeah. Of they were there, and then you have another of several other of the countries in Europe fighting. I think Spain is not involved. Switzerland, of course, is supposed to be a neutral country. France is under German occupation, as is the Netherlands. But even doing this and holding a front is getting more and more difficult for Germany. And with the loss of Italy, you're going to see that front stretched further. Because, like I said, to the east, that way is completely blocked by the USSR. If Hitler had not broken his treaty with the USSR, the non-aggression pact, they wouldn't have the threat of the USSR in the east. And this might be a different war. But yeah. Because Hitler did not like leftist ideas. Remember, fascism is a right-wing idea. The USSR was communist, a left-wing idea. So yeah. And eventually Hitler broke the pact with the USSR when he went in to attack them, quite unsuccessfully. The Russian winners are notorious for being an almost impossible time to try to attack Russia. Ask Napoleon Bonaparte. What you do is you're supposed to attack in summer and then hold at bay during the late fall, winter, and early spring months. Then you go and push further. Yeah, both Hitler and Napoleon had disastrous moments because of the weather. They just really were not up to the task of getting over the winter weather. But yeah. The war itself would be highly disastrous, so Russia would lose millions upon millions of lives. Hitler and Germany by far suffered the most Germany and Russia, sorry, Hitler and Germany. Russia and Germany by far suffered the most casualties. I think Russia saw the most overall. If I'm remembering correctly. I could be very wrong on that. But, anyway, As I've said, this will be the end of the episode. As always, educate thyself. Think, read, study, learn. Someone tells you something you have trouble believing, ask them to cite their sources. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you all in the next one. Until then, later.